Konnichiwa. Nihon Cricket Pod do Yokoso. Welcome everyone to the Japan Cricket Podcast, episode 2 of the new season. I will be your host, Alan Kerr, head of cricket operations at the Japan Cricket Association, and joined as ever from sunny Melbourne is Mr. Todd Luckhurst. Hey Todd, how are you?
Not too bad, Alan. Bit cold and windy and wet down here, but we're surviving. And I believe you're in the UK at the moment.
I am recording straight from sunny London. It's actually glorious today. Sun shining. I've only been in town for 48 hours, but I've made the trip to Lords already. Straight off the plane, straight to the home of cricket, which I thought was a pretty good commitment. Just for a T20 blast game between Surrey and Middlesex, London Derby. It was good fun. A few drinks, catch up with some friends, and saw a few guys smash a few sixes. So that was good. Kane Williamson was playing for Middlesex, which was nice. So yeah, that was a pretty good day out. Pretty good way to start my trip. Hopefully this weather lasts, but I'm not holding my breath. Famous English summertime is scheduled for some pretty significant rain from tomorrow. So that's excellent. And what news from sunny Melbourne, mate? It's other than the wind and the rain, are you looking forward to anything on the horizon?
Well, we've got weather turns here usually about September, so we've got another month before we start seeing some nice days, and um, then we'll move straight into cricket pre-season. Of course, cricket kicks off in Australia around the first Saturday in October following the AFL Grand Final weekend. So that's what usually happens. So we'll be in full swing probably in another month or so.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, with all that to look forward to, it's probably time to start looking back, isn't it, Todd? So, fair bit of cricket to go through. We should probably come clean to our listeners and confess this is actually the second time we've recorded this podcast after the first time the audio had several issues due to Wi-Fi connection problems at the SICG. So, hopefully, this time around, this is going to be smooth, easy, and just as funny as it was first time.
Hopefully.
So, under 16s. That's where we're going to start. The under 16 Japan national team was in, where are they? They're in Malaysia for the first ever ACC East Zone Cup that we've participated in. The tournament itself's been going on for, I don't know, 12, 13 years, something like that. I think I read the stats somewhere that Nepal have only lost 2 matches ever in the East Zone Cup. Both were finals. And the last one was back in 2013. So they're basically unbeaten for 12 years or something. So they certainly came into the tournament as favourites. The East Zone Cup, 10 teams with 2 groups. Group A was Nepal, Singapore, Japan, Indonesia, and Bhutan. And Group B was Hong Kong, Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar, and the Maldives. So some pretty good teams in there, and all teams that a lot of teams that we've faced, particularly at the under 19 level in the last year or two. Before we get into the East Zone Cup, though, this was the second under 16 tournament that the Asia Cricket Council have hosted this year. The first one being the West Zone Cup. Now, the West Zone Cup's set up slightly differently. It was only 6 teams, so it was all in one group, and everyone just played each other, and then there was a final. The 6 teams in that were the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. That's the order in which they finished as well. The UAE were very much the dominant side. They made 317 in the final. They made 346 against Oman. They chased down 200 against Bahrain for the loss of just 2 wickets. And against Saudi, they chased down 86, none down in 6 overs. They also made 300 against Qatar and 260 odd against Kuwait. So pretty dominant, the UAE in that competition. And certainly going into this, we've sort of expected that Nepal would be the dominant team, which I think they pretty much were. Todd, were you able to catch any of this? It was all live streamed, but given that it was during the middle of the working day, I suspect you were perhaps more restricted to watching the highlights.
Yes, a bit hard to watch during the day at work, but of course the highlights are available on the Japan Cricket YouTube channel, thanks to Japan Cricket. So head over to YouTube if you want to have a look and search Japan Cricket. Hit subscribe, and you'll be alerted to any cricket which is streamed or videoed through Japan Cricket, and you can have a look at the young talent who recently represented Japan. So we'll have a look at the first match. Japan in the first match took on. Hold on 1 second. Of course, Bhutan. Japan batted first, 312 for six, with Keisei Kabayashi Doggett making his first 100 for Japan, getting 104 of 109 balls. Well done to Keisei, a fantastic effort. And two of the three Hara Hins boys chiming in also, with Monty 60 off 85 and Gabriel coming at the end and smashing around 42 off 18. In reply, Bhutan managed 97 all out with the third of the Hara Hins boys, because there's three of them playing in the side. And Japan captain Charlie taking 4 for 11. Oh, and he was followed by Ishan Lau with 2 for 9, did damage with the ball. A great start to the tournament for Japan.
Just
Of
to
course,
jump
in the
in there,
second match,
just to jump in, I noticed one thing about that Bhutan game. Japan bowled 10 bowlers in that game, which is,
I'm guessing the only bowler who didn't bowl was the keeper.
yeah, I don't know if Skylar was asking if he could have a bowl, if he could take the gloves off, but yeah, I'm not sure I've seen that before in the Japan game or any game. So wonder if that's some kind of record.
He must be very good with the ball if he didn't get a bowl. But of course, then we moved on to the second game where Japan took on the powerhouse of the region, which is Nepal. As Alan said before, they've dominated these tournaments for many a year. Japan batted first and just managed to 80 runs all out. Charlie Harahin's got 36 of 48, leading the bat. And in reply, Nepal, of course, chased the runs down 81 for 1 of 14.2 overs. Good experience, I suppose, Alan, playing against a really strong side in the region.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember when we played Nepal in the under-19s Premier Cup 2 years ago. And yeah, we got smashed by the under-19 team. I think they bowled us all out for like 40 or 50 and chased the runs down in no time. And it was an interesting response. I spoke to the coach, it was Dino at the time, and he was just saying that rather than being down about it, the boys were actually quite excited about the opportunity they'd had to see how good kids could be at that age. It was a real eye opener for them, and I think it was the same here. I think our guys probably felt a little bit disappointed that they didn't have their best game. They didn't play their best game in that one, and they felt that they could probably have given Nepal a bit more of a contest. But at the same time, you can't not be impressed at the standards that the Nepalese were setting, and they'd already beaten Singapore in the first game, so they kind of knew winning against us would book them in at the top of the table. They plenty of experience playing Indonesia and Bhutan before, so they kind of knew a bit more what they were up against there, and felt that those would be simpler games. So to come in and win their first two tricky games by comfortable margins meant that they were very much in pole position for the tournament. So yeah, I think that those opening two games were pretty contrasting. 300 in the first game and then 80 all out in the second. A bit up and down for our boys, but they always knew that the next game was going to be the important one against Singapore.
Yes, that moves us on to the third game that Japan played in the tournament when Japan took on Singapore. Japan batted first, managed to get 165 all out in the 46 over. Charlie Harahins again, 77 off 81 with a good innings, and Skylar Nakayama Cook, bit of a linchpin in the innings. He got 50 off 119 with the leading run scorers. Singapore managed to chase it down in 33 overs, 7 wickets down, but it was a good performance by Japan. It picked up wickets in clumps, picked up two early wickets, had Singapore 22 for 2. Then the next wicket fell 58 for 3, with Gabriel Harahins picking up a wicket, followed by a 50-run partnership, with Japan picking up 2 wickets in consecutive balls, with Judo Ball doing the damage. Singapore were all of a sudden 108 for 5, and Japan were really back in the game, weren't they, Alan?
Yeah, it was a funny game to watch this in that Japan made 160 odd with one partnership of about 130. And not much else from the rest of the team. And again, I think the boys look back at this one as a bit of a missed opportunity because there were more runs to be scored. And if we'd got up to 180, 200, then I think we'd have been very much in the contest. And Singapore, it was their captain, wasn't it? Rian Naik, who finished 97 not out, I think. And the next highest score from the Singapore team was 11. So, again, they've kind of lent very heavily on one player, but they were able to put together partnerships, which we only put together one. So despite our two guys making decent scores, ultimately they just had enough to get over the line. I think that we showed some pretty good fight because what was it, 130 for 7 something like that. So they still needed 30 odd runs with 3 weeks in hand. And at that point, it looked like we might get over the line. But prior to that, I think it was 110 for three or something. At one point, they were absolutely coasting. So, good fight by the boys, good experience. But yeah, it was disappointing. It was a disappointing loss. And I think all the guys really felt that they had enough to beat Singapore, but it just didn't go their way. And that's sport, really, isn't it?
Sorry, it's definitely were in the game. Of course, Singapore were, 108 for three, then all of a sudden 108 for five, 121 for six, 138 for seven. So the fight was really good from the Japan team. Unfortunately, Singapore have a really good player called Wiaan Mulder who kind of just took it away from Japan in the end and guided Singapore to victory with 3 wickets in hand.
Yeah, it wasn't the first
And
time.
then we moved on to the final, Matt.
Sorry, just before you go on, it wasn't the first time we've come up against him. So Wiaan Mulder played against the under-19s on the washed out tour of Singapore they went on prior to the World Cup qualifiers. And he made a half century unbeaten against the under-19 team. And my understanding is he has actually already been called up by the Singapore men's team already. So I don't know if he's actually played, but he has been in and around the squad. So, I mean, for a 15, 16-year-old to already, as a batter, to already be seen to be good enough to be playing in the men's team, that suggests he's a pretty good player. And there's someone we're probably going to see quite a lot of over the next few years. So probably need to work out how to get him out.
Yeah, it sounds like he's a bit of the rising star of Singapore cricket, which is going to be very exciting in the next few years. And so we'll come up against him again. And you're right, might have to watch a fair bit of tape to figure out a way to get him out. And we'll move on to the final match where Japan took on Indonesia. Japan bowled first, bowled Indonesia all out for 61 in 21 overs, with Hugo Kelly getting 4 for 14, and Juto Ball again picking up 4 for 8, doing the damage. In reply, Japan chasing down to 62 and 13.1 overs for the loss of 6 wickets, with an even contribution, 3 batsmen in the teams. Nothing to really report with the bat, but unfortunately, Japan were out in the group stages.
Yeah, it was a funny old tournament in the way that it was set up, in that we had our first 3 games played within the space of 5 days, and then we had one match in the next 10 days. And that's because we went out. Had we made the semi-finals, we'd have had 2 more games, of course. But the way the ACC organised it, you have to kind of guess whether you're going to stay in or go out, and you book your accommodation. And then if you do go out early, you have to change your flights and get yourself out of there. Or if you do make it, then you have to kind of choose. Do you book your flights after the group stage, or do you take a punt? So we took a punt and hoped that we would make it through, which means we get a nice big invoice for the extra accommodation, which was a bit disappointing. But I think ultimately the guys, yeah, that last game against Indonesia was, they already knew it was a dead rubber. There was nothing riding on it. Bowled them out for 60, and I think perhaps they could have applied themselves a bit differently with the bat. There were certainly a couple of guys in that top order who hadn't really made any runs, so I thought might have taken the opportunity to sort of knuckle down. A nice 40 not out probably would have been pretty good for someone like Hugo Kelly, who didn't make a lot of runs in the tournament. So 62 for 6, looks a bit ugly, but I think the game was always under control. The funny thing is about this tournament, Toddy, that Singapore and Nepal were both in our group, and they ended up beating the teams in the semi-finals. So Hong Kong had won their group alongside Malaysia coming in second. So that meant that sorry, it was Nepal taking on Malaysia in the semi-final one, and Hong Kong against Singapore. And Nepal and Singapore came out winners pretty comfortably in both those games, which suddenly meant that we've come third in our group, and you're wondering, we're actually the third best team here potentially. And even Rayo, the coach, I asked him when he got back, and he was like, I think we were probably the second best team, but ultimately we've come joint fifth. So yeah, frustrations there, but it is a learning curve, and that's the whole point with these under-16 tournaments. It's an opportunity for these kids to wear the Japan shirt and to try and show what they can do, and hopefully get a taste of what international cricket's about, what touring life is about. So I think some valuable lessons there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the ACC have to be better with this fixturing. I mean, 3 games 5 days and then 1 in 10 isn't ideal, especially the age group. I mean, sitting around hotels isn't ideal.
In the middle of school
But
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny how it all worked out where both teams in Group A beat both teams in Group B, which, on reflection, you do go back and think, well, probably were the second or third best team if results went the way of Japan.
Yeah,
But
I think the way that they did it, I don't know for certain, but just speculating, because it was our first under 16s tournament, I feel like they seeded us down the bottom, rather than looking at the results of our under 19 team and being like, okay, well, these under 19 guys have played the last two Asia Cups, um, qualified third from the last under 19 Premier Cup. So maybe there's some talent there, and perhaps we can see them a little bit differently. That being said, I think Hong Kong and Malaysia both probably deserved to be um, the top seeds in their group. So I don't know. Maybe if they'd switched Malaysia and Singapore, um, it might have been more of a chance for us there. But it is what it is. But yeah, the way the fixturing was done it's very very ACC. So the fixtures came out, and we were actually supposed to have all four games played every other day. So it was going to be four games in 7 days or whatever. But then 2 days before the tournament started, I got contacted by the organizer, who said they want to move our game against Indonesia, because otherwise Indonesia had two games in a row. And so by moving it to the final day of the group stages, that meant we had this huge gap of like 6 days between the Singapore game and the Indonesia game, at which point we were already out. Um, and so it worked out pretty well for me, because that meant that even though we were already out officially, we still had this other game to play. So our accommodation bill doesn't kick in until the day after the Indonesia game. Whereas if it had stayed on its original day, we would have
oh,
to pay for an extra like 5 nights accommodation. So I was quite grateful for the move there. It helped us out, but at the same time, yeah, just the amount of downtime for the guys. And the frustrating thing is there's no access to facilities. You can't train. You can't really do anything. So yeah, I mean, I think it was the guys based in Australia were all on school holidays, but I think the rest of the team were time out of school. And I do think there's a bit more duty of care should perhaps be given to the kids, a bit more flexibility. And like they have the grounds, so why not just organize more matches? Let the teams that are finishing third, fourth, fifth in each group just play against each other. Even if you just organize one more game, it would be something. But instead, you know, it worked out how it worked out. I do feel, and perhaps this is something for you to go through, Todd, around a bit of a missed opportunity across these two tournaments. You've got 16 teams in total, one tournament in the West with only six, and one team in the East with 10. I feel like that's not the optimal setup. What do you reckon?
it's a bit of a shambles, isn't it? I think you want the best playing the best. There's probably an opportunity missed for Nepal to play UAE. Um, and why not just have two divisions and 8 teams in each, and you can seed them so it is competitive. You don't want lower ranked teams getting smashed by the powerhouse teams. Like two divisions would work well. I think that's something that really needs to be looked at going forward.
Yeah, I think Thailand were relatively competitive in Group C, but after that, there was quite a significant drop off. I know Indonesia made us work pretty hard to chase down the runs. And I think that they had a couple of decent performances, like individual performances, but they still ultimately lost um, three out of four games. For in the other group, though, I think it was the Maldives, who, in four matches, their top score was 32. And you just kind of think, well, what have they got out of that experience? Probably not very much. Um, so yeah, I do think trying to even things up, and yeah, again. So the Maldives have gone out without really firing a shot. Couldn't they have had a game against Bhutan, who finished bottom of our group, and then at least those two teams get a chance to play someone at least closer to their level. Even if they just done one round where, say, we'd played Thailand for fifth place, and Indonesia had played whoever it was, Myanmar in the other group for seventh place, and then Bhutan and the Maldives have played for ninth, then at least you've got hopefully every team goes, all bar one team goes home with a win if they're going to stick with this group of 10. But yeah, I think combining the East and West, not necessarily into a one tournament of 16 teams, which was mooted. I was told at one point that they were looking to
Oof.
that. And you would have just had four groups of four, which would have been awesome. Why not just do that? But the reason I was told was that travel becomes a problem because some teams don't want to fly more than 3.5 hours, which seems a bit arbitrary, don't you think?
I mean, if you want to play in these tournaments, you got to travel, but because we don't want to travel 3.5 hours is a bit ludicrous,
Mm.
surely.
Yeah, I think that.
But I think with the just touching on the teams that play another game thing, surely it could just be a playoff system where seven plays eight, like you said, you know, all the way down to the bottom. And I mean, teams are there to play cricket. It's nothing's being solved, or there's no progress with teams sitting in hotel rooms, not being able to train. Like, what's the point of going? So I
Yeah.
think that's something that really needs to be looked at moving forward.
And actually, I mean, Malaysia is a fantastic place to host because they have a ton of grounds. So there definitely could have been more games organized, I think. So yeah, I mean, we don't actually get asked for feedback from these tournaments, but I might, you know, make a few more friends as I always do with providing some feedback anyway. I'm not sure my suggestions will get anywhere, but yeah, I think either doing two divisions um, with eight teams in each would be better. But the other option of one big tournament would be pretty cool. And you could probably do it in less time if you just had four groups of four. And if you did four groups of four and then you split it into um, quarterfinals, semifinals, final for both sets of eight teams, so that you have like a plate winner as well. Um, that's kind of like what the under 19 World Cup structure was. It can balloon out to be quite a long tournament if you do that. So I'd have to see how practical that would be, but from a fixturing point of view and from grounds point of view. But that's what they did for the men's and for the under 19s and for the women's were 16 team tournaments. But the two teams that finished bottom just went out. So I think for me, the priority should be giving the teams more cricket and having fixed dates. This is something feedback that I've given to the ICC as well, because the same thing is going to be happening in the men's qualifier. It's the first time that this happened to us. Teams have to travel so far and teams have to organize flights and accommodation. To not actually have any certainty of when you're going home is really challenging. Now, for some of the teams, for the ACC, yeah, sure. If you're playing in Malaysia and they're only flying 3 hours, well, actually, these kind of flights are almost like taxis. They go every hour. There's like 8 flights a day. So getting on a flight at short notice is pretty easy. But for us, it's definitely not. And they're saying that some teams don't want to fly more than 3.5 hours. We're flying like 9 hours. So I don't think the players care about flying more than 3.5 hours. This is random parents influencing tournament structures, which just seems bizarre to me. But I don't know. Look, I can't pretend to speak for everyone in the region, but I think if it's a case that you either fly the distance or you don't participate, that's if you give associations that option, I think they'll still come. I think they'll say, okay, well, we'll do it then. And if they don't, well, then they miss out. And hard deadlines around committing to participate, 3 or 4 months in advance would make life a lot easier. So again, we didn't get the email about the venue and the dates and the fixtures of this tournament until 5 weeks before it was due to start. So it doesn't give a lot of time. And I think part of that is just the ACC has such a busy calendar and probably not that many people working there. So yeah, definitely improvements that can be made to the overall structure. But at the same time, I think we should probably be grateful that it exists. I think it is a good thing to have. There's nothing like this in the EAP region that the ICC organized. The ICC did used to do some under 15 stuff, I think. Speaking to Raheel in the office, he played in an under 15 tournament years and years ago. So the ICC used to do something, but that's long gone, and so now the ACC, at least they are providing opportunities for younger kids to get some experience and pull on the shirt. And as kind of alluded to previously, there's probably some players who might be the only time that they play for Japan. So I think that experience for some of those boys, it stays with them forever, hopefully, and is a real source of pride. So it's great to see. And you never know. We never quite know how these guys will kick on. Hopefully, it's a bit of a motivator and an inspiration source for other kids playing in the Japan junior programs to try and get into that team and have that opportunity in 2 years' time.
Yeah, definitely. It's all part of the pathway too. The other issue with I don't want to harp on the travel thing, but I am. The other issue with that is that it limits who can host. Like, if we only fly 3.5 hours, not
Yeah,
everyone's going to be able to host, are they? So, like, come on.
yeah.
Got to be better than that.
It does seem to rule us out of hosting, doesn't it? Because
Definitely.
I don't think Indonesia. How far is it to Indonesia? I think even that's more than 3.5 hours. So, yeah, it's a bit bonkers. Anyway, that is the end of the international season, I guess, from the season that started back in April, finally finished in whenever it was, June, July, I can't remember. July, I think that tournament eventually ended. But we can now cast our mind across to Japan domestic cricket because there's been quite a lot of it going on. Not only has there been cricket going on, there's been silverware dished out already. We have to go all the way back to before the international stuff started for the JCL T10. The T10, a 9-team tournament this year, which I think we'll probably be discussing 9-team tournaments a bit more in future episodes of the pod, Toddy. But 9 teams is not an optimal number for a tournament. So we had 3 groups of 3, and the structure was that the top team from each group would go through to semi-finals, and one team would get through based on net run rate. However, as all good plans often do, were thrown into chaos on day one when there was an absolute deluge of rain in Sano, and the first day was completely washed out. As a result, Group A went to a bowl off, which I was very excited about. I've basically always wanted to be involved in the bowl off, so I set that one up, and we agreed that the team that finished second in the bowl off would take the final semi-final place because they're paying their subs to be in the competition, and to be eliminated without playing a game was perhaps a little bit hard on them. So in the bowl off for Group 1, we had the Tigers, we had Sano, and we had the Tokyo Titans. All 3 contests finished 2-0, which was interesting. Sano took on the Tigers first, and I believe, if I cast my memory back, I think it was Kazumasa Hiratsuka hit the stumps first up, followed by a huge knee slide and chest pumping, which was certainly got the atmosphere going in the gym. And Zubair Khan followed that up with a strike. So Sano knocking over the Tigers. The Tigers then went on to challenge the Titans. That was another 2-0. Sabara Travichandran, I remember, he hit first ball, which put the pressure on the Titans immediately, and they weren't able to respond. And then Sano against the Titans. So at this point, Tigers were 1-1, lost 1. And if the Titans had won the final game, then all 3 teams would have been 1-1, lost 1. And we discussed prior to the start of the bowl off what we would do if that was the case. And we'd agreed it would just become sudden death. So you'd just have one bowler from each team bowling continually until there was an elimination. So thankfully, it didn't get to that. Sano managed to beat the Titans. Titans didn't manage to knock over a stump in any of their 2 matches. But Kazumasa Hiratsuka again was the hero for Sano, striking stumps, and that meant that they went through top of the group, and the Tigers were the other team to get through. So pretty fun day, Todd. Have you ever had any involvement in a bowl off?
First time I ever heard of the bowl off was when you mentioned it to me. That was what happened.
Oh,
I just
really?
want to say that if there's ever a drought in Japan, just organise a cricket tournament because it'll just rain. I know we say it a lot, but it just rains, doesn't it? Every time there's cricket scheduled or something, you're going to have an issue with rain, especially in Sano.
Yes, it's pretty infuriating. But I mean, look, it wasn't. There was a bit of obvious disappointment around the weather and We probably didn't really have structures in place to handle it, but ultimately, the bowl off was fun. I'm surprised you've never heard of it. Like I remember watching county cricket games decided this way in the 90s, like first class matches being decided with bowl offs to go through in, or not first class, list A, um, the one day cup matches. They would literally. I remember watching one on the early editions of Sky in the late 90s. It was a NatWest Trophy 50 over game, got rained off, so he just went out and put some stumps in the ground and had a bowl off. And I was like, this is awesome. Penalty shootout in cricket. Yeah, for those who don't know, I guess we should explain what a bowl off is. It is, yeah, it's like a penalty shootout. So you just get a net, guys just bowl at the stumps. And if you hit the stumps, that's the equivalent of scoring a goal, I guess. And we did it with alternate goes and 5 bowlers chosen. So yeah, the atmosphere for that was fantastic. It was pretty good fun. Group B and C.
I actually do remember.
Oh yeah.
I actually do remember that. Was it the early start of the early days of T20 cricket internationals? I think I saw a bowl off one day.
You reckon? This is something
Can't
we
remember where it was, but I just recall it in my head seeing maybe a highlight package of it somewhere where there definitely was a bowl off in some tournament somewhere, or I'm not sure what it was. It was a T20I. There definitely was a bowl off. So it's
yeah,
interesting. It's pretty exciting.
it is. It's a people kind of laugh at it and think it's a bit of a joke, which it kind of is, but at least you're getting a team going through based on something skill based. I think it's the best option that you've got when you need to find the winner, the deserving winner. Otherwise, you just go off like a seeding system or you toss a coin or whatever. But at least it's calling on a skill that's pretty important in cricket is being able to, bowl it where you want to bowl. So at least it's a skill based way of deciding a winner. So in that regards, I do quite like it. And it like I said, the atmosphere is good. And I think everyone who took part in it felt that it was good fun and a good experience. So I'm pretty keen to keep it in. We'll see about that. But groups B and C, Toddy, at least it didn't rain for those guys. Did you want to talk us through what went on in the other groups? I think you were able to catch some of these games, weren't you?
I did see some of these. Of course, it was the start of the season of cricket in Japan, so good warm-up games, I suppose, for kind of warm-up tournament for the cricket started for the season. So game 1 in Group B, we had KKR against the Falcons, and KKR chased down the Falcons 65 in the 8th over. And game 2, we had the Falcons chase down the Wyverns 84, also in the 8th over, with Anand getting 42 off 17 and Petkar 40 off 18 by starring with the bat. And Rupa Singh took 4 for 8 off his 2 overs. Fair effort in a T10 game. And then in game 3, we had Wyverns setting KKR 89 for victory, with Rahul Kano getting it done with the bat, scoring 53 off 35. But it wasn't enough as Sapan Navaratna took down the Wyverns bowling attack with 56 not out of 25 balls, guiding KKR to victory in just the 7 overs. Let's start there for Group B.
Okay, and then in Group C?
Group C, we had Men in Blue in game 1, posting a good total of 94 for 4. Mishra smashing 50 off 32. But that wasn't enough as the Chiba Sharks chased down the target of 95 in the 9th over, with Ben Ito Davis taking down the MIB attack with 51 not out of 25 balls. Game 2, MIB took on the Rising Stars. Batting first, MIB made 99 for 2. Good score on the T10, with Vishesh Patel smashing them to all parts of the ground is 60 off 30. And Mishra posting 30 not out of 23. In reply, the Rising Stars got 72 for 8. They couldn't really get going with Chowdhury, the only batsman to get in double figures with his 25 off 16. Then in the final game of Group C, the Chiba Sharks batting first set the Rising Stars 109 for victory, with Nico Pole 40 out of 29 and Gufran Mir 33 off 20. In reply, the Rising Stars only made 71 for 8, with Mahmood Hassan getting 31 off 15. And with the ball, Timmy Moore picked up 3 for 10 off his 2 overs. So that was the end of Group C.
So what did that leave us with? That left us with Sano, Tigers, Sharks, and KKR as the 4 teams going through into the semi-finals.
Yep, so we had semi-final 1 where we had Sano take on KKR. Sano batted first, posting 91 for 5, with Kula Saria getting 33 off 20. and Makoto Taniyama 30 off 19, top scoring with the bat. In reply, KKR managed a 72 for 8 with Vinay Iyer top scoring with 29 of 16. This meant Sano booked themselves first spot in the final. And then in semi-final two, we had the Chiba Sharks taking on the Tigers. Chiba Sharks making 76 for 10 with Gufran Mir 28 of 12 top scoring. And with the ball, Vikas Jar took 3 for 5 of his 2 overs. In reply, the Tigers can only imagine 70 for 7 off their 10 overs, falling 7 runs short of the total, meaning the Chiba Sharks progressed through to the final against Sano.
Yeah, fair effort defending 70-odd in the T10 game. So that was well done.
Yeah, really good effort.
And then the
And
final
then
was top scoring or high scoring game, wasn't it?
big final. So that Sano batted first. They got the highest scoring total of the tournament, getting 120 for 2, with Rayo Sakurano Thomas smashing 50 off 20 balls, and Kulisario again getting 38 off 19. Chasing the big total, the Chiba Sharks are off to a flyer. With Gifran Mir, the score was 41 for 1, but he was bowled by Gifran Mir was bowled by Chandama for 21 off 10. After that, Ben Ito Davis was the shining light for the Chiba Sharks, making 38 off 15. No other batsman got to double figures, and the Chiba Sharks managed 96 for 9 off their 10 overs. So it was a big win for the Stano team, and Makoto Taniyama doing all the damage with the ball as he picked up 4 for 12 off his 2 overs, meaning Sano with the T10 champions.
Yeah, it's always fun when it's a Sano Sharks game. You know, lots of JCA staff involved, a lot of interest for us, quite a few national team players on show as well. So good little fixture that. And I think, you know, a nice way to end the tournament. I think it probably was the 2 best teams that ultimately got to the final. And Sano putting on that highest score of the tournament suggests that at full strength, they were probably the best equipped team to do it. I think the T10, you know, it's a good pre-season tournament. I think we've talked a little bit before around what why the T10 exists, and I think the opportunity to play these shortened games is good practice because you never quite know when you're going to play a rain reduced game. And you know, we saw in the women's tournament that we discussed on the last pod, Todd, you know, the women's team played against Hong Kong in a 9 over game. And you know, you suddenly don't know how to bat. And so for the guys to get this opportunity, I think is worthwhile. And we try and do that for the girls sometimes to play these reduced games as well, just to, you know, kind of free them up a bit and get them looking to hit boundaries more often. Not so much of an issue with the guys, but you know, you do still, even in the T10 game, you do still have to respect the odd good ball. But you know, or you don't have to, I suppose, but you can, and you can catch up pretty quickly. You can still take, you know, 20 off and over with a dot ball in there if you're clearing the ropes regularly. So I think that the guys do take a lot out of this tournament. We organize it as sort of a bit of a curtain raiser for the season, so a bit of a warm up, and then it goes straight into the T20 season, and you know, all the stuff around the Futures League and the Japan Premier League. So I think it's a good thing to have in the calendar. Maybe the structure could do with a bit of a tweak. Are you a fan of the 3 groups of 3 structure, Todd?
Well, look, I think it can work, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how else you do it. Do you do 2 groups of 4?
Well, I think
8-team tournament maybe instead of 9? I'm not sure. It's hard when everyone wants to participate too.
well, it is, and I think the issue we have is that we do it. The tournament starts in March, and the weather is a bit unstable around then. And when you've got sort of one day for each group to play, and then you run the risk of a day being lost to the weather, well, what do you do with that group? Now, because it was the first round of matches, we were able to have a bit of flexibility, but we wouldn't have been able to do that if the middle day had been rained out or the last day had been rained out, because people would start, you know, I mean, we got enough questions around fairness and stuff for the tournament, which I understand people were a bit frustrated. So I think what I'm looking at, and this isn't decided by any means, but I quite like the idea of just having it as a 1 weekend event when you get all the teams up. And I've had a look, and you can do it if you have 8 teams. You can just get all the games played across a Saturday and Sunday with a winner at the end. So I think that's something that I'll pitch. We had 9 teams this year. You know, restricting it to 8 teams, I think is fine. but it just depends on what the desire is to teams to play. So we'll see. I think having it scheduled for a weekend and then maybe having a reserve weekend, maybe 2 weekends later, is doable. So I think that's kind of where I might look to take it. But what I do know is that we need to have some pretty clear guidelines and playing conditions in place in case it does rain and what we do and whether it's a bowl off or something else. How we decide teams to go through is probably pretty important. But yeah, it's a fun tournament. I think it does, as I say, fills a gap for us, and I think everyone who played in it still enjoyed something, and it was good indicator. Guys like you mentioned already, Ben Ito Davis found some good form leading into the season. So certainly, I think there are guys who played in it and did well, took a lot from it, and the guys who didn't probably were looking on with a little bit of envy. They've got teams that are not playing. So yeah, maybe there's some more we can do with that. The JCL T20 is the most recent tournament to get going. It's usually scheduled to go through the hotter months in July and August, and it's not on the live stream every Saturday, but I think it's every other Saturday or something like that. There are games on YouTube. So as Todd already mentioned, don't forget to subscribe to the JCL YouTube channel, and you'll get notified when games are coming on. I think there might be some this weekend. I can't remember. But yeah, 14 teams in the T20 this year. So we split it into two groups of 7, and each team will play 4 matches. So you won't play everyone in your group, but at the end of the group stages, the top 4 in each group of 7 will progress to a quarterfinals weekend. And then that will lead into a finals weekend with the 2 semis and the final being played. What's been happening so far in that, Todd? You managed to catch any of it?
I've catched a couple games or highlights of a couple games, seeing little bits and pieces when I've tuned in. But yeah, so all teams have played 1 match with 6 teams playing 2. So in Group A, we have Sano, Max, MIB, Falcons, Starkings are all on 1 win, and the Serenites and the Alpha Quashers have only played 1 game and have lost 1 game each. And then in Group B, we have the Sharks, Wyverns, Rising Stars, Tigers, and KKR all on 1 win, with the Wombats and the Tigers yet to win a game. Just going through some stats. So, high score of the tournament so far is Gufran Mir, who's scored 87. And wicket-wise, with the ball, Abhishek Ananda's picked up 5 wickets in his 2 games.
Gufran Mir is a name that's popped up a little bit in our last 5 minutes of this chat, isn't it? A few runs in the T10 and runs again in the T20. He was freshly called up to the Japan A squad this year. So yeah, someone who's doing what he can to press his case for inclusion. So yeah, a name to keep an eye on, I guess. Cool. So that's the T20, still in its infancy, really, as the tournament goes on. So we'll probably keep an eye on that as the season progresses. But the other one that we generally like to cover, and it's going on in the background throughout the year, is the Japan Cricket League 40 over competition. The 40 over Division 1 competition we'll have a quick glance at. Alpha Quasha is currently leading the way at the table. They're top, with Chiba Sharks sitting behind them, and Sano in 3rd, and Falcons, last year's champions, currently in 4th. They've lost 3 games this season, the Falcons, and they went through the whole of 2024 unbeaten. So, sorry, they've lost 2 games and have 1 no result. So just 3 wins out of 6 for the Falcons at this point. The Tigers have only played 5 matches compared to 6 for all the others, so they're still kind of in that mix. But a bit of a gap starting to open up now. That being said, results can be pretty unpredictable, and we saw at the time Wyverns were bottom of the table and Chiba Sharks were top, and we saw Wyverns get a win against the Sharks a few weeks ago. So Wyverns now sitting 10th out of the 11 teams. Rising Stars, the other team down at the foot of the table. Titans, Wyverns, and the Rising Stars with just 1 win each. Those guys probably in a battle to avoid finishing bottom and have the threat of relegation. So a fair bit going on. Any stats that leap out of you from the JCL so far, Todd?
Just had a look at some batting, and we've had 100 this year. So we've had Abhishek Anand got 100. He's had 1 ton. Had a few 90s, but the one which I was going to mention was Sabo Rajichandran got 99, Alan.
Oh, Sabo. So he'd probably take that over the 2 Golden Ducks he's registered recently. So he'll probably be he'd probably rather be at that end, rather be annoyed at missing out on 100 than not getting anything at all.
Yes, shout out to Sabo. I'm sure he'll be thrilled that we mentioned it on the pod.
I'm sure he will. Cool. So that's the JCL as ever, is an interesting competition to follow. Alpha Quashers wouldn't have been my pick to be top at this point, so good to see them, bouncing back after a couple of slow years. They've been sort of mid-table, not really making finals. I don't remember them making finals for a long time, so if ever potentially. So yeah, good to see them having a bit of a resurgence, and be interesting to see how the other teams fighting out for playoffs manage to do. I think that rounds up most of our stuff, Toddy. But there have been a few things going on in the cricket world that we should probably just touch on. The one that's really divided opinion has been Mr. Wiaan Mulder, who, when we recorded this the first time around, it actually happened that day, so it was very current at the time. But it's been a couple of weeks now. I just wonder, Todd, how do you reflect on his decision to retire on 367 not out, retired on himself?
I think he's will be remembered as a legend, and people will remember him for retiring on that score rather than trying to go past the record. I think he will go down in folklore as the man who said, "I don't need to pass it. I'm content with what I've got," and people will remember him more for that rather than saying that they'll play against Zimbabwe. So, because that what probably would have happened, people will forget what he did. If he did pass it, they'd be more like, "Oh yeah, but it was against Zimbabwe."
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I share the same opinion on this, but a lot of people I've spoken to, and a lot of the press coverage, and certainly a lot of the social media chat was that he bottled it, or that he should have pushed on. That records are there to be broken. Even Brian Lara said, "Oh well, I would have gone on to break it." Brian Lara was saying, "It's not my record; it's a record that belongs to the game of cricket, and if there's an opportunity to go for it, you should go for it." But I do feel like it's saved us his decision to declare on himself and retire it basically at 360 odd. It saved us the conversations that would have inevitably come about Zimbabwe having test status, records being cheapened, all this sort of stuff. And people try to say, "Oh well, Brian Lara's 400, that was against a pretty poor England team and stuff." And it's like people single out that Gareth Batty was the spinner and he's hardly an England legend, but Steve Harmison, Matthew Hoggard, Simon Jones, and Andrew Flintoff were the other seam bowlers that day, so they were all pretty handy. So I think that you know there's enough challenges that Zimbabwe cricket face. Being ridiculed for having someone score the highest ever test total against them is probably something they don't need right now. And Zimbabwe cricket, we want to grow the game of cricket. We want test cricket to be played by more countries. But the inevitable chat that would be, should Zimbabwe have test status? Do they deserve it? This is cheapening the record books, all that kind of nonsense. That would have come up. And from Wiaan Mulder's point of view, yeah, he probably wouldn't have actually liked to carry that around, because it would have been a lot of nonsense. And I think that he just showed incredible self-awareness, particularly his interview after the game, just to say, Brian Lara is a legend, someone I look up to, and the legends get to keep the records. And I just think like they had enough. He knew that his team had enough runs on the board to win the game. It was only day two, but he put winning the game first, and making sure that they had the time to do that, and they won by, I don't know, an innings and 200 runs or something. But I think that it was a really selfless act, and one that displayed incredible self-awareness. And yeah, as you said, I think that people will look at that list of highest ever test scores. He's fourth on the list of highest ever test scores. It's the highest score by a South African. Like, he'd already broken a lot of records. And it's not like by choosing to not have a crack at 400, the innings becomes irrelevant. It's still incredibly relevant in the history of Test cricket. It's the fourth highest score ever. And so when people look at that list, there it is. It's the highest not out score of all time. So he's the guy who gets to say, I could have broken Lara's record if I wanted to. And I think he's in a pretty nice position. I think he will end up in a win-win, where he probably would have ended up as a lose-lose if he'd gone on to break it.
Yeah, I saw his interview with Sean Pollock, and he pretty much said exactly what you said. And I mean, he was his first test as captain. He's only played 21 test matches. Like, it just shouts out to me. He's just a leader, isn't he? Like, that's what leaders do. He could have went out there and did it, or did whatever he wanted to do, but he put the team first, put the record first. He's probably just a humble guy. He's a good cricketer. Obviously he's captain his country and wants to win first, but you know, as I say, not all records are there to be broken up.
I have to confess that like I don't know anything about the guy. I'd really never heard of him prior to this innings, and now yeah, I absolutely know who he is. And I think the fact that he's made that decision will give him his place in cricketing folklore as it is. And you know, someone said to me the other day, "Oh, well, if he was playing against Australia, he would have batted on." I'm like, "Well, yeah," and I think he would have done, and I would have been all for it in that instance. So I do think to clarify that the opposition comes into it. Like, if you're good enough to score 400 against Australia or England or another full member, then you're good enough to have the record. But this Zimbabwe team is not where it would like to be. And even people bring up the Matthew Hayden innings. Matthew Hayden made 380 also against Zimbabwe. I was actually at that game. And that Zimbabwe game team, they were actually pretty good. Like their bowling attack was not bad at all. And that was just Matthew Hayden on a road at the Wacker having a day out. And so I think that it is slightly different. And you know, I think that had he been playing in a different game and had the opportunity, then yeah, it would have been fair enough because you earn it slightly differently. The other big story that's come out since this test match, Toddy, is Italy. Italy have beaten Scotland and qualified for the World Cup, which is quite an exciting thing for associate countries when you see new members knocking over the established order and getting through to their first ever World Cup. It's quite inspiring from a Japan point of view. Did you follow any of that qualifier?
Yeah, I did follow. I was made aware of it on Twitter or X. What was happening over there, and it's just amazing. I was following it intently, and I got the format wrong. I messaged you, Alan, and said, "Oh, they might make it," and you're like, "Oh, well, they're pretty much in."
Hmm.
And I was just amazed that I went back and looked at the last time that Italy played Scotland, which was back in 2023, and Scotland in the T20 got 245 for two into the All Out for 90. So big turnaround some 2 years later.
That's cool. I hadn't seen that. Yeah, that's
Mm,
awesome. And I think, look, Italy have done. I hate to phrase it this way, but they've done some smart recruiting. They've gone around. They've found
mm,
good players of Italian heritage. You know, Joe Burns is kind of the leading name there, as a guy who, you know, he played however many tests he did for Australia. He's got a couple of test hundreds. Played in the Ashes. You know, good player. But he's 35 years old. Plays at the same club, of course, as the Japan captain Kendall Kadawaki Fleming. They're club mates at Norths in Brisbane. And you know, having a guy like that kind of sets the standard. They've got some really good coaches in there. They've got Peter DiVenuto who's coaching. Kevin O'Brien as a sort of someone I know a little bit, and I know he's been involved for about 3 years now. So he's really seen that journey, and you couldn't ask for a better guy. Kevin O'Brien, someone who's was at the forefront of Irish cricket coming through. The first Irishman to score a Test 100, scored 100 against England at the World Cup, scored one against Pakistan at a World Cup. You know, this is a guy who's really led Ireland from, you know, very low level associate nation to being a full member and a test playing country. So he knows the journey, and he'll be able to speak to the players around the challenges that they're going to face going into that World Cup. So I think they're in pretty good hands. And I do think that from a Japan perspective, you know, it makes the dream possible. It makes think no, nothing's impossible. And we know that we've got the World Cup qualifier in Oman. Perhaps we'll dig a bit into that in the next episode. But yeah, seeing Italy qualify was pretty cool. And I gutted for Scotland. I've got a little bit of Scottish blood in me, so I'm bit disappointed for those guys. They ended up finishing fourth in that qualifier. They finished below Jersey. Jersey beat them on the final day, which I did watch. And friend of Japan cricket, Jake Dumford, who came over as a MCC placement back in 2019, hit the winning runs for Jersey to beat Scotland. So that was pretty cool to watch as well. So and the only sort of asterisk is that the Italy Jersey game, they finished level on points, and Italy went through on net run rate. And the Italy Jersey game was washed out earlier in the tournament. So a bit of a shame that match didn't get to be played. Because that would have ultimately decided which team went through. But I'm sure that'll add a bit of spice next time they come up against each other in the qualifier. So yeah, plenty going on in the world of cricket, and plenty still to look forward to. As we mentioned, the Japan men's team are off to Sri Lanka pretty soon, so we can discuss that on our next episode. Todd, the squad should be announced very soon, maybe even today. The announcement will go out. So yeah, bit to be excited about there, and the women off to Fiji in early September, and then the under-19s off to or somewhere, we don't know where yet. The ACC Premier Cup will be held at some point in October. We don't have the details of that, and the men to Oman for the qualifier, and then of course the under-19 World Cup to start the year in 2026. So plenty of cricket still to come, but we'll be keeping an eye on the domestic stuff over the next couple of pods. Anything you wanted to finish off with, Toddy?
Just going back to that Italy team, like you said, they've recruited well. They've also got Emilio Gay over the batting for Durham. So,
He's played some
they've
stuff.
done well. Yeah, he's played England A too, I think. Like they've got some serious players, so that's is good to see. And just like you said, associate nations are qualifying for World Cup. There's always hope for Japan moving forward, which is fantastic.
Quite right indeed. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. It's time for us to say goodnight, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. So, for me, that's Otskar Samadashta.